Esther had always been the first daughter, the pride of her family. Her father, a man of strength and stature, was the backbone of their small village. The family was once well off, with a house full of laughter, warmth, and hope for the future. Esther's father worked tirelessly on their farm, providing food for his wife, Amina, and their 4 children. In those days, Esther's life was filled with simple pleasures, running through the fields with her siblings, helping her mother prepare meals, and listening to her father's stories about the world beyond their village. But that life was not to last. When Esther was just 18, her father fell ill. It started with a mild cough, which soon worsened, and despite all efforts, he passed away. The loss devastated the family. Amina, now alone with 4 children to care for, was not equipped to handle the heavy responsibilities of running the household. Her strength waned under the burden, and her grief left her unable to care for the family as she once did. Esther, only a teenager herself, had no choice but to step into the shoes of the mother and caretaker. With no other source of income, she did everything she could to ensure her siblings were fed, clothed, and able to go to school. She became a chameleon of labor. By dawn, she was at the market, her small stall piled high with yams she had helped harvest. By midday, she was fetching water from the communal well for the elderly in exchange for a few coins. By evening, she was helping a local seamstress, her fingers aching as she sewed patterns. Sleep was a luxury, and she often fell into a restless slumber with the weight of her family's survival pressing down on her. Her own needs were forgotten, a distant memory. Her clothes were always patched and worn, her hair unkempt, her face perpetually smudged with dirt and fatigue. She didn't have time for herself. She was a mother to her siblings, a provider for her family. She was a young girl, but the responsibility she carried aged her beyond her years. She missed out on school, and her health deteriorated from overwork, but she never complained. Every penny she earned went to her family's needs. She was a mother to her siblings, a provider for her family. But slowly, the family she was sacrificing for began to take her efforts for granted. They saw her as a machine, an endless source of support. Their constant demands for more money, more help, only left Esther feeling empty and invisible. One afternoon, Esther returned home, her body screaming for rest. She had spent the entire day hauling heavy sacks of cassava. Her mother was sitting with her siblings, who were laughing and eating. Esther collapsed onto a stool, her head in her hands. "Mama," she began, her voice hoarse, "I cannot do this anymore. I am tired. I can't be working like this again. My siblings should also do some work to support the family." The laughter stopped. A cold silence descended upon the hut. Her mother's face hardened. "What do you mean you can't do this anymore?" she said, her voice laced with a venom Esther had never heard. "Are you not the firstborn? Is it not your duty to take care of your family?" The words were a physical blow. The years of self-neglect, the back-breaking work, the silent tears she had shed in the dark, they all crashed down on her. From that day on, the coldness in her family grew into outright hostility. The moment she expressed any need for rest, any desire to reclaim a piece of her life, she was met with scorn. "Selfish," her mother would hiss. "Useless," her sister would sneer. They called her names that sliced deeper than any knife. Her own flesh and blood, the people she had toiled for, saw her as a failure, a disgrace. The very idea of her having a life of her own was an unforgivable offense. One evening, after a particularly vicious argument with her mother, Esther made a decision. It was a terrifying thought, but it was the only path she saw to survival. She packed a small bag with her few belongings, took the little money she had saved, and walked away from the only home she had ever known. She didn't say goodbye. She couldn't bring herself to do that. She knew her decision would be met with anger, hurt, and possibly resentment, but she couldn't carry the burden of her family any longer. She needed to breathe. Esther traveled to the city, hoping for a fresh start. The city was a far cry from the small, peaceful village she had known. The noise, the lights, the fast-paced life, it was all overwhelming, but it was also a place where she could finally feel free, where she could rediscover who she was outside of being the caregiver, the provider, the silent sufferer. She found a job at a small cafe, doing what she could to survive. Though the pay was meager, it was hers. The salary was barely enough to cover her rent in a cramped shared room. She was alone, completely untethered, and a deep, aching loneliness settled in her bones. Weeks turned into months, but not a single word came from her family. She would often look at her phone, hoping for a message from home, an apology, a sign that they missed her. But the screen remained dark. No calls, no texts. No one reached out. It was as if she had never existed. One evening, Esther met Michael, a successful businessman with an easy smile and a warm heart. Michael had come to the cafe for coffee, and their first conversation was casual, about the weather, the cafe's coffee blend, and the hustle of city life. But as days passed, their conversations grew deeper. Michael was kind, patient, and above all, he listened. For the first time in years, Esther felt seen. She shared pieces of her past with him, her sacrifices, her fears, and the weight of being the person who had always put others first. Michael was moved by her story. He didn't pity her. Instead, he respected her strength and resilience. Over time, Michael's affection for Esther grew. He showered her with love and care, treating her like she had never been treated before. He took her to fine restaurants, surprised her with thoughtful gifts, and most importantly, made her feel worthy of love and happiness. Esther, though hesitant at first, found herself falling in love with him. Michael, a man who had seen the world, didn't want anything from her. He simply wanted to give her everything. He wanted to love her, and in return, he asked for nothing but her heart. He gave her the space and freedom to be herself. A year later, they got married in a beautiful, intimate ceremony. They made the decision to leave the country, to start a new life, far from the shadows of her past. They settled in Canada, a land of crisp air and endless possibilities, and built a home filled with love and laughter. Years passed. Esther, now a successful interior designer and a loving wife, was living a life she had only ever dreamed of. She had embraced her new reality, her old life a distant, painful memory. Then, one day, she received a notification. It was a photo on social media, a wedding post from a friend in Nigeria. In the picture, she and Michael were smiling brightly, a testament to their happiness. The post had been shared, and eventually it found its way to her family. They couldn't understand why she had cut ties with them, why she hadn't reached out, why she hadn't come back. They sent messages, calling her selfish, accusing her of abandoning them when they needed her most. Her mother, in particular, expressed her anger, accusing Amara of forgetting her roots, but she ignored them. But as time passed, their tone changed. The calls started. First, her sister Ada, then her younger brothers, finally her mother. The numbers were all blocked and unrecognized, but the frantic, tearful voices were all too familiar. "Esther, please," her mother sobbed, "we are so sorry. We were fools. Please forgive us." Ada's voice was filled with a desperate regret. "We never should have treated you that way. We miss you." But Esther ended the call. They saw her success, her happiness, and they wanted a piece of it back. They had seen the picture and had realized what they had lost. The endless burden she once carried was now their regret. For days, Esther let the calls go unanswered. The hurt was still fresh, a scar that ran deep. The thought of their words, the neglect, the abuse, it all came rushing back. Michael, her pillar of support, held her close. "You don't owe them anything," he said gently. "Your forgiveness is a gift, not a duty." After much reflection, Esther decided to call them back. The conversation was strained, filled with their apologies and her quiet acceptance. She listened to their pleas, their tearful regrets, and the stories of how difficult life had been since she left. But as she spoke, she realized something profound. The girl who had left the village was gone. She was a different person now. She told them she forgave them. The forgiveness was for her own peace, to release the bitterness that had taken root in her heart. But as the call ended, a finality settled within her. She had forgiven them, but she had not forgotten. The burden she had carried for so long was a ghost of the past, and she would not let it haunt her present. She would send them money from time to time as a gesture of her new life, a symbol of her prosperity. But she never went back. She never became their provider again. She had a new family, a new home, and a new life that she had built with the man who saw her worth. The burden of being the firstborn daughter, the endless well of sacrifice, was a chapter she had closed forever. She was finally free. The story of Esther teaches us that self-preservation is not selfish. It's easy to get lost in the role of a caregiver, especially for a family that expects endless sacrifices. However, true strength lies in knowing when to set boundaries, prioritize your own well-being, and choose your own happiness. Your worth is not defined by what you can do for others, but by who you are. To all the firstborn daughters who carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, you are not a burden bearer. You are a builder. Your strength, resilience, and compassion are incredible gifts, but they are not an endless resource to be exploited. Remember to pour into your own cup, set boundaries without guilt, and know that your own dreams and well-being are just as important as anyone else's. You deserve happiness, peace, and a life that is truly your own. If you'd like more heartfelt stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a tale from this old voice.